Every day we struggle to do what is right. But the Yetzer Hara somehow always seems to get in the way. Though there are times when we are successful, we should never let our guard down, as a victory today will not guarantee a victory tomorrow, and a defeat today will not guarantee a defeat tomorrow. But the Yetzer Hara is an ancient and skilled enemy who will strategically lie in wait as he perfects his art of war. But fighting the Yetzer Hara is a lifelong undertaking, and in fact, one should never be sure of himself until his dying day. But in order to fight him, you must learn the rules of engagement. But I guess you can say these are matters of the soul and the duties of the heart. So chapter 1, what is meant by dedicating one's actions to God? Dedicating one's actions to God means that whenever one serves God, either publicly or privately, his intentions are for the sake of his name alone and not to impress others. Now, believe it or not, that concludes chapter 1, which is why I said I'm going to be combining a few of these together. So sit tight. We're going to go into chapter 2, which states how to dedicate one's actions to God. And so it states that there are 10 steps one must take to dedicate his actions to God. When these 10 steps are anchored in his heart and become the cornerstone of his service to God and the root of his actions, he will be able to dedicate his actions to God. Now, this means he will turn to no one but him, accept no one but him to fulfill his wishes, and he will want only to praise God. And the 10 steps are 1, to accept wholeheartedly the oneness of God, and to 2, be aware of the kindness God constantly bestows on him. Number 3, to accept upon himself the service of God. And 4, to recognize the need to trust God alone rather than anyone else. And number 5, to believe that no one can help him or harm him without the Creator's approval. Number 6, to be indifferent to praise and insult. And number 7, to refrain from trying to ingratiate himself with people. Number 8, to divert his attention from worldly matters when he is occupied with concerns of the world to come. And number 9, to be in awe of God and feel ashamed before him. And number 10, to be guided by his intellect and accept its advice when the Yetzer Hara is trying to sway him. So I just want to take a step back for a second. You know, this again, like I've said this about other sages. I'm saying this again about this one. You know, they write these things and they're almost hot off the presses. Like they wrote them so long ago, but they seem so applicable to today. I mean, you're talking about, recognizing that the need to trust God and no one else, and the belief that no one can help or harm him without the Creator's approval. And I got to say, like that right there, especially with what's going on, there's a lot of panic and fear. And I think, which leads to the last point, which I think a lot of us, try to bypass, is that a lot of us think with our heart as opposed with our head. And the Torah really, they literally say you are to think with your head and not with your heart. And we always seem to get this backwards. So a lot of times when we're dealing with situations and with people or their reactions, we too become emotional and we act out of that emotion. And so it is literally a duty to train yourself to, think with your head about what the next move should be. It should be strategic so that you can recognize that there's a Yetzer Hara who is kind of like, who's really, poking the bear, sort of say. So we're moving on to chapter 3, and it says, which acts must be dedicated to God? So it says, duties of the limbs. Tangible mitzvot, such as wearing tefillin, eating matzah, and taking the lulav in the hand, which we do in order to fulfill God's will, become perfected by being dedicated to the service of God. It is possible to do these mitzvot for a purpose other than for the sake of God. For example, a person might do them to impress other people with his piety, hoping to gain their respect and praise. However, duties of the heart, such as believing in Hashem, loving Him, fearing Him, trusting Him, and loving your neighbor, cannot be done insincerely to gain respect or praise, because no one other than God knows what is in one's heart when he does them. You do these mitzvot only for the sake of the Creator, the one who scrutinizes the innermost recesses of your soul. As it says, I, Hashem, plumb the feelings and search the innermost thoughts. This is brought down in Yirmiyah 17:10. And the hidden things belong to Hashem, our God. And this is brought in Devarim 29:28. And so I think we're going to do one more. We're going to get into chapter 4 now. And I think after that, we will conclude this episode. And chapter 4 is things that deter you from dedicating your actions to God. And it says that there are 3 things that keep a person from dedicating his actions to God. 1, failure to grasp the exalted majesty of God and His abundant goodness. 2, failure to understand His mitzvot and His Torah. 3, the enticements of the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination, which make the empty pleasures of this world seem alluring and thereby discourage one from taking the road that leads to the world to come. So it says that ignorance of God's exaltedness detracts one from dedicating service, because a person cannot serve his master wholeheartedly if he is not completely conscious of him. So one who serves someone only if he expects a reward or punishment. If one serves God without recognizing His greatness, he is not motivated by his sincerity in his service to the Creator, but rather by the impression he makes on people. So this is actually something that a lot of people fall into. When we're saying it out loud, it almost seems like duh, like common sense, but this really is something that happens more often than you know, and it's vice versa. People, they don't know about Hashem, so they don't serve Him. And they take it a step further. They don't know about Hashem, so they just, the rabbis made it up. And, and a lot of times when you're arguing with certain people, you realize very quickly that they've never really taken the time to read anything about Hashem, yet they have all this judgment. So it says, he is afraid of people, or he hopes to benefit from them. Thus he tries to impress them with feigned piety. And he's a serving man rather than serving man's creator. So, again, a lot of people, we hear this advice a lot, just because, they dress, froom, and, it's really amazing, because we really do get taken in a lot by people like this, but only Hashem really knows who's really doing it for what reason. So it continues on, it says, this same lack of comprehending God is also the root cause for idolatry. But in fact, the conduct of an idol worshiper is less reprehensible than that of a hypocrite who pretends to serve God, but is actually serving people, for 4 reasons. The first is that the idol worshiper of old lived in a time when there were no prophets to warn them through signs and wonders that their beliefs were false. They therefore had no way of knowing that they were on the wrong path. By contrast, a person who observes the Torah for the wrong motive is accountable, because he has already accepted from the Torah the mitzvot and the service of God, and has been cautioned not to serve anyone else. And so the second reason is an idolater worships things like statues, trees, the sun, and planets that do not rebel against God, whereas a person who observes God's Torah to impress people worships these people, some who are not observant, and they actually are rebelling against God. So it says, for the third reason is that an idol worshiper serves only one idol, whereas hypocrites serve an endless number of people and his hunger for their approval or admiration. Now, I think even more so now than perhaps when this was written, we can clearly see how that can happen. People, if you go on these social media platforms where you have all these likes and, and I don't even know what else is on there, but if somebody posts something, and I'll give an example, if you're posting something about your outfit or what you ate or where you're going, and you didn't get a certain number of likes, it really depresses a person. And so they go through all these lengths to keep trying to impress people. And really, it's like they are serving many masters, because you'll never impress or you'll never satisfy everyone. So you will constantly be in this rat wheel trying to please everyone. In the end, it is you that it's going to be let down. So it says, number 4, an idolater's pagan way of worship is obvious, so people can be alerted to stay away from his public denial of God. On the other hand, a hypocrite's denial of God is not apparent, therefore people trust and learn from him. He can do much more harm than an idol worshiper, and in fact, hypocrisy is the world's worst disease. In our language, we call such an individual a hypocrite, a braggart, and a seducer. And failure to understand these commandments of the Torah detracts one from dedicating his actions to God, because one who does not understand his directives cannot be doing them with complete dedication. And he will not perform any act because of God's commandment, but rather because for some other reason. And this is so even if he's conscious of God and his greatness. Our sages put it this way: a boor cannot be fearful of sin, and an unlearned person cannot be scrupulously pious. And this is brought down in Avot 2:5. And the seductive ideas of the Yetzer Hara fall into 2 categories. 1, the Yetzer Hara raises doubt in a person's mind about fundamental beliefs like prophecy, reward, and punishment, and undermines his faith so that he won't do even one mitzvah with the intent of serving God. And 2, the Yetzer Hara offers arguments to prove that you are not required to serve God enthusiastically and zealously, that you don't need to exert yourself in his service, and that you should devote your energies toward the welfare of this world and its inhabitants. And so that concludes chapter 4. But again, if you were to really just take a quick canvas of people you know or you interact or cross your path, you will see this is in play with a lot of people. Their minds have just been totally eaten up, and the standard or lack thereof, it's just really, it's alarming and it's startling. And it's not just with Goyim. It's not just with, Yidden who are not frum. We're even seeing this like within frum people. So you have to really be careful. You have to be able to identify not only this in other people, but most of all to identify it within yourself, which I think is really is the goal. The biggest mitzvah is the one to be working on yourself. Has v'shalom, that you've been in this life and you go through everything you go through and you learn nothing from it. And even worse, that you don't even grow from it. So this is a very serious problem. It is one that you must constantly be doing a cheshbon of your own soul. You have to be doing an accounting of your own soul constantly, because at any moment the Yetzer Hara can strike. So I'm really hoping that you're enjoying this so far, and I can't wait to be back soon. I want to thank Hashem for giving me the zechus to be able to do this, and I hope we'll all be together again soon, Bezrat Hashem. You can follow this series, Duties of the Heart, on YouTube at Gimel Dalet 777. Click subscribe to be notified of upcoming shirim.